I'm making a video game with underwater mechanics. In this devlog,
Dialog UI, dialog lines, map reveal effects, pause panel updates. I wanted to have a second character just for the dialogue portions, so I played around with making the helmet for the second character as a start. This character acts as either your boss or a representative of some organization you're working for. I created a couple of color variations and put them side by side with the diver's helmet just to compare contrast. I played around with some of the prefab UIs from the Pixel Crusher's asset and set up the helmets as portraits. I tried the JRPG, WRPG, and the VN templates just to compare. I was not a fan of the WRPG template. Out of all the templates, the VN template for visual novels was my favorite, so I picked that one as a base to work from. The first problem I encountered was keeping the speaker's name on screen. I found a forum post about this topic. I tried a lot of the suggestions and found a workaround, which I posted about on the forum. The developer then gave me a hint on where else to look for the controls. Inspecting the animation clips, I found the logic that was hiding the name on start and end. Since this solved my issue, I replied on the forum and gave tips to others on how to find the information. Then I spent a bit of time stylizing and tweaking the UI until I was happy with how it looked. Since I'll have just a few conversations, I created a new database to house all of them. I started by building out a simple conversation for the tutorial. I'm adding a couple of spots where the player can pick between two versions of the same response to add some personality to the dialogue. Here's what that conversation looks like. After showcasing this and getting some feedback, I decided to keep the continue button to allow the player to read at their pace. I also wrote initial versions of the conversations to unlock the other worlds. With that out of the way, I brought in the new UI and conversations to the world map. My first version had the conversation loop because I never marked that milestone as completed. I solved this by using a dialog scene event to call a component when the conversation node is reached. This solution eventually changed based on how events are fired. This fixed the looping problem, since conversations fire when a milestone is reached and that milestone has not been completed. The tutorial conversation lets you either get sent to the tutorial or skip it, so I also used dialog scene events to handle both options. If you accept the tutorial, the game loads you into it once the conversation ends. If you decline, you'll continue on to the next conversation, which gives you the first world. To add some flair to the map reveal logic, I wanted to display particles. Since my map is a world space canvas, I ended up using the UI particle image asset to get particles on the right canvas. I started by adding the effect to one of the anchors and a test button to call a function to play the effect. Then I added logic to reveal the whole group of anchors. This script simply loops over each anchor and calls a function. Then I tied the dialog completing for a conversation with calling the reveal effect on a specific anchor group. I still need to tweak the timing a bit, but I'm happy with this for now. Now that I had the behavior working, I updated the rules to the real logic and included tests. Most of the worlds will unlock when you've gathered one chest from each level. With tests that verified that behavior, I refactored some of that shared logic. After refactoring, I reran the test and expected everything to still work. With the updates to the evaluators, I updated the unlock rules so the third world would have some levels unlocked when revealed based on the reveal requirements. I also assigned rules to the other levels based on how many chests are available in prior levels. One of the pieces of feedback I received a while ago was that telling which anchor represents which level was hard. So I added a number label to each anchor. Localizing the UI exposed a lack of layout elements in the UI, so I focused some time on fixing that. I started with a game settings UI, aligning each row to the left. Since one of the rows has additional elements on the right, I used a workaround to align those while still having the horizontal layout group expand. The spacer group is just an empty object with a layout element. I used the same formula for the sound settings panel, aligning things to the left. The sound panel had a completely different font, which I hadn't noticed. I used the font checker tool I wrote a while ago to catch these issues as I touched the other panels. The keyboard panel also relied on static placement, so I followed the same strategy of adding layout groups and layout elements to align things. This ended up being a lot of copy and paste of components with the same settings. I discovered that you can copy components to multiple objects when multi-selecting, which made the whole copy-paste process faster. I followed the same formula for the gamepad panel, keeping the same settings so the keyboard and gamepad panel look the same. For the final test, I updated one of the labels to have super long words just to ensure the text shrunk correctly. Depending on how things are translated, I'll alter some of the widths of the buttons. I also addressed some prior feedback with this update, the first one being that the world map had no way to return to the main menu. The second minor update was adding a close menu button, since pressing start on the controller to close it was not intuitive. I plan on changing the controller binding and keeping the button.
That's it for this devlog. My focus for the next part will be
create the tiles for the fourth world. Create the first levels in the fourth world. If you want to support me, please visit the Don't Drown store page linked in the description and add the game to your wishlist. Until next time.